So Rabbi Makasha, this whole beer of the Gilui of Chachma Stima, that which is Chachma Sosim Betzim, Lasid Lavoi, for which is required the Bekiyas Hanor, Bina, and the whole Avodah of Ketores of Yom Kippur, Reach, Dafka, the Nukva Smoli, Tshuva, Meitzar, that's Mamshech the Indian, from Pnimius HaMoichin, Dafka, the left ventricle, the left cavity, rather, of the Chotem of the nose is Mamshech from Pnimius HaMoichin, that's the Vedas HaTshuva, Dafka, smaller. So this is Mekasha to the Pasuk in Kapitel Samach Aleph. The Miktzei Oretz Elecha Ekra is Miktzei Oretz. There goes on Moishe Mashiach. Miktzei Oretz is Dafka from the Tacht, and actually says that point in the next Maimer. Here he just says that it goes on, it doesn't go into that prat. Well, yeah, he does, yeah. The end. The Ktsei Oretz, the Ktsei Tachten, the lowest edge. Meitzer Agolos, and from there, Eilecha Ekra, Eila V'leili Midoisav Atzmus Mahus, Pnimis Atik, which is the Pnimis of Pnimis Abba, which is Chachma Stima, Daren and Iflois, which Mashiach is in Megala, and is Dafka through the Avodah of what? Of the Meitzar. There's a whole Arichas which wasn't very clear entirely, it's missing something. There goes in Moishe Mashiach, and it's a bracha for Mashiach himself, not just these two stages, but Golus and Geula, not only the Yom, the Pasuk is going to repay his debts. Yom, what's the two Yoms? And it's the Doir, that's mentioned earlier in the Pasuk. Whatever that's about it is. First, he started off saying that goes on the different generations, then he says in Mashiach Gufa. Whatever the beer is, the bracha is there. V'hinei ois ches, kiven shela osid. Lava yia gili de primis ha-Torah. Since Lasid Lava be the gili of primis ha-Torah, sheshorish be primis chachmas tima. That Lasid Lava, the shorish is where the shorish is primis chachmas tima, which is how Maimer addressed. So it's not just then, but now, that now is Achon for the Gilui, since Achon has to be similar to that which it elicits the Gilui, so the Li is there for now. This whole Avodah being Megala Chachmas Timba. The mayones have to be spread outside. Who achandela gilu daren in the flois aren lo shenister. That this is the achanda to the aren. No, I will show him and not you. Even though it starts off for you, and then it abruptly changes to third person because he explained why it's not nisgalim now. It's nister and gili pnimis atik shmitzat atzmai hu nelam v'nister. But nonetheless, it has to be the achon to that, and that is the fotis and mayonis now. Similar to what it says in Gemara, happy is the one who comes here, Tilam Haba, with his Talmud in his hand. It's possible he leaves it down in Nilam Haza, as explained in Tanya, if it's not learned, with Bittul and Av every year. But here in other parishes, so the analogy that there is talking about now the Elam Haz and Elam Haba, the world to come, Gan Eden, that you come there with the Torah that you learned here. So similarly, Lagabi now is Managolos Yemesa Mashiach. Al der as a gamba negela gilipinim satiri de lost lovish achan lezeh ali Talmud beyod achan is through the Talmud beyod. That which he learned already and the connections he forges now. Namely, in Nigla, the Torah Pnimis HaTorah Bizman Hazeh, the Nigla, the Pnimis that he learns Bizman Hazeh. Elosh, Achshav, Iker, Now the Iker is Nigla. Deze is Galalose, Primis HaTorah, that's the Achana to the Primis of the Nigla. Shazia Iker, Primis HaTorah, then the main Gili, the main limit HaTorah will be Primis HaTorah. If you do a Pesach Basen in Sayeno, to know the word of the Rabbi, quoted by the Friedrich Rebbe, Pesach, Achashon Pesach, Tavshin Daled, interesting word. As each there is the Iker Nigla, when Primis geht noch Nigla. Now the main thing is Nigla, and Pnimius follows it. But lost it, that's an Ike Pnimius, or Nigla, but noch gain noch Pnimius. The Ike limit is a Pnimius, and therefore the Nigla, not the other way around. So now we're going to answer all the questions of the first stage. The Davish there will stretch his hand out a second time. Shane is Yosef also means he's going to add. He did it once, so it's another time. But the pasuk makes it even clear that Shane is and the pasuk connects it to Yitzias Mitzrayim, despite the incomparability. And you point out the stir in the pasuk. The one hand is Niflois, the other hand is Eskimei. Shagili Niflois, the loss of Lavi. But Dafka, so we have the answer because it comes Dafka to the Meitzah. The Dafka lachak domad gilim adn terish v'tzias Mitzrayim, but it comes Dafka after the Akdama of adn Torah of Yitzias Mitzrayim. But the days is zeichem achakach v'gila and inflates the asid love. It comes through the Akdama, but then only through that, as explained in the last Oisia, and we zeicha to the Gilui Masid Lavish lemayla bein arech la gil matan Torah, which is incomparable even to the Gilui matan Torah on one level. Now that on one hand, the Matan Torah will never be a second time, but the conscious Torah that's revealed is Bein Haroich. Shagil Matan Torah Ikar Galia the Torah Matan Torah was Galia, the revealed, the halachas and so on, the mitzvahs. As some Razal Shatira Shadm Lamad Bein Mazeh. Hevel he lefnei Rosh Hashanah. Shechan says in Medrash Vayikra on Mishlei Rabbah. That the Torah Pasuk learns now is Hevel compared to the Rosh Hashanah Mashiach, because the Gilui is explained early Barichus, not Stam Pnimis HaChachma, but that which is Sosan Be'etzem, which the whole mind really addressed. That was the whole good of it. Shazia Ika Pnimis HaTorah, that'll be the Ika Pnimis HaTorah, the Skala, the Malka Mashiach Bekorev Mamash. I'm just going to read as we usually do. This is what might we just, this is, where is it? This is the Hechel. So the mile of the Chaitim of the nose, which is in Yonav Mashiach, which is Vericha Beiras Hashem, the Meirach V'doyin, he will smell and judge. That from the mile of Reach is that through this is Nimshach, Pnimis HaMoichin. Pnimis V'etzem HaChayis, not Chayin, but Chayin D'Chayin. Both Makifim of Chay and Yechidah. The mile of Ketores and Korbanos, which is the mile of the Makif over the Pnimi, but in Ketores Gufa, there's the regular Ketores and Ketores of Yom Kippur. Regular Ketores is Shaykh Pnimi, which is Chaya, but the Ketores of Yom Kippur, which is Tshuva, is Chay and D'Chay. And what's there in Avodah? This Avodah of Rusa de Liba. There's two levels of Rusa de Liba. The desire that comes of this bonus and the flow of it in Sof. So he's in Kedusha, but he is pining for Gilui higher than the Akbala of Kedusha. But that's all mitzad. His Kalim, his desire, Bekitzer. The matzav is good, he wants more. That's not mamshich the Inyan at all. El mitzad ha-meitzad the tshuva shemagi ben mekan nefesh k'yoseh bedafka to the meitzad tshuva. That's the neck of a smoli. That is magi and etzem hachayis, and that's dafka the avodah of Yom Kippur. And that's the Rosh Mashiach, Pnimis HaTorah, which is Moshe and Atzmos Chachmas Tima. Pnimis Abba bound up with Pnimis Atik, and the Achonas Dafke, the Bekiyas Hanor, the Bina. Here that Bekiyas Dafke Bina, whereas Kriyas Yamsuf was the Chibur of Atzilus and Biyah, and therefore was the Bekiyah was splitting was the ocean. And that's Malchus in Atzilus, and Oretz is Malchus as Malchus descends into Biyah. So that was the Chibur in both Eifanim, Shittas Hazeh, Shittas Harizal, of Atzilus and Biyah. But Lasid Lavoi is not merely the Chibur of Atzilus and Biyah, but the Chibur of Etzem Malikus with Ishtalshalus, and therefore Bina, which is already the union of Ispashtus in Ishtalshalus, has to be broken, opened, and that is the Achana for Lasid Lavoi Dafke. Whereas Kriyas Yamsuf was Achana for Chitzon Yischach Mastimba, which is the Matan Torah, and Lasid Lavoi is the Achana Dafke for Pnim Yischach Mastimba, and hence the Nor has to be split. And how is that done? Through Min HaMeitzah, Miktzei Oretz Yelecha Ekra. Okay, now we'll begin the next line. It's right in front of you. Right in front of you. Shabbos Parshas Achrei, that year also was leap year, seems. Yeah, it was. Mevarch Machedesh Iyer Tov Shechav Beis. Pasuk says, "Venigleh Kvod and the glory of Hashem be revealed." Bro, called Basar Yachtav, and all flesh will see as one. Kipi Havaya Diber, that the mouth of Hashem speaks. As that Marazach Mekut Torah explains the Alter Rebbe. What does it mean? Hashem's mouth speaks. Kipi Havaya Diber, who had Diber Elyon Shal Yodin Yisavah Kol Hanivroi. It means that the supernal speech by which all of existence is created. As the pasuk says, by the word of Hashem, heaven was made. This is the ongoing invested creative force that brings about the result, Yeshmain, every moment. So we're going to see that the mouth of Hashem speaks. Mashiach will come to be revealed that the entire reality of the world, its whole identity and is the Dvar Havai that creates it. Now what's the diak here? All flesh will see. What's the shayla? We're talking about understanding, spiritual understanding. We say it not just a spiritual understanding, but a divine understanding. So first and foremost, that is a shaykh be'ikla never shall kiss. First of all, this experience is first and foremost, and never shall kiss. The never shall kiss understands. It's a godly entity and understands godliness. Then also never shall bahamis. Not only never shall kiss understand, even the human intellect will grasp, which is possible. Intellect is also spiritual, and there's spirit understanding of spirituality. And what's going to be, and the sofka is so this understanding will also be experienced by the body. So therefore the question is, the pasuk should say that even the flesh will see. Meaning, what the pasuk would have expected to say is that it'll be well understood by the neshama of a nefesh habahamis, even the nefesh habahamis, ad kedei kach, so much so will the neshama understand the person on these two levels of his neshama and nefesh habahamis, shemusik gam ba'guf, that the body will also grasp it, but that's a consequence of the neshama. He ignores the neshama, ignores hasaga, and the pasuk deals exclusively with the basar. Shemazeh mashma That the Iker Gilui will be to the Basar Aguf, and that, as he'll explain later, needs to be understood. What does that mean? Base, you haven't beheked I need to see. Didn't see it. So says the Eibishter, creator of heaven, Yotzer ha'aretz, fashioner or former of the earth, v'oisa, and its maker, loisa yubra, he didn't create it that it should be empty, l'sheves itzar. But he formed it. He didn't create it to be toil, to be undeveloped, to be empty. But l'sheves itzar, he formed it to be settled, and the pasuk concludes, and the avaya ve'inoid. So the Maimon Tafresh Memtes, the Rabbi Marash explains the Pirish HaPasuk. Why does he need an explanation? That explains the problem with the pasuk. Why is he describing God as the former of the world, the fashioner of the world? And then he formed it that it should be settled, inhabited. Not sure that it should be the opposite of it, desolate. Toya means desolate. Harigmar B'riyas, the completion of the creative act. It's not just forming it, but making it, doing it. Why does he describe the act of creation as forming it? And then he also adds and concludes, and he made it. But the primary way of describing creation is forming. Again, Lashon Yitzira, he formed it to, it should be inhabited. And not as we expect the Pasuk to have said, that's the Shaila that the Maimon is going to explain. Moving in another question, what's the kesher with this, that the world was created not to be desolate, but to be settled with and there is no other. Explains the Marash and the Maimon Sofrish Memtes. The Iker Abriya is in order that it should be inhabited. That's why he formed it. To be settled by whom? So who settles it? It's not at the end of the pasuk. They just tax on, I am God, your Lord, the author of this statement. But the end of the pasuk is being masbir. What is that which needs to be settled in the world for which it was created? And that is ani avaya einot. That's already answered one of the questions. What's the shaykhs with the end of the pasuk? Ani avaya einot. The answer is that is what he's talking about. That's the subject of Lasheves Yitzar. Pashtus is talking about people settling it and developing the world and creating societies and cultures. The Pnimius, it means that too. But the kavan of all of that is ani avaya einot, which is the Nisav HaKadosh Baruch Hu, yes, they did betachtoinim, that the kavan is he wants settle me in the world. They should make this world the dir betachtoinim. This is l'sheves itzara, that the likus should be dwell, the indwelling of the likus lamata. Just by the way, I don't have a chumash in front of me. Yeah. The whole end of karbonas. I mean, what I'm saying is that the chiddush of chassidus, that the kavan is Nisav HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it raises all the eyebrows and gets resistance every time I say it and show. I mean, God desires, it's all for aschar and einish, still hard to get through. But the whole Sefer Vayikra is Parshas Aksuvim. Reach nichayach l'Hashem, nachas ruach lefanai, shamarti v'naseh etzayin. Yes, for nachas. Now, till Siddur, the answer, the pshat, it was not nachas. He behaves that way just to motivate us. But Parshas Aksuvim, over and over again. And most telling was the last Rashi in Parshas אחרי, which we all read, not going to go into the whole beat of the pasuk and Rashi, but just the words themselves. We read this in the Chittas how many times? How many times did he do it? 3 times. So the last Rashi, the pasuk says, do not become contaminated by all the things that I told you to stay away from. And Hashem Elokeichem. So Rashi says, if you do, I'm not your God. And then you become invalid before me. And what benefit will I have for you? And you won't have my protection, so you'll be destroyed. What good do I have for you? Usually there's a very different bit. First, explain Rashi why you have to say this is the pshat here, but just the pshat shemikra. Child reads this. What good do I have for you? If you're going to contaminate yourself, reject me, and get destroyed. So the whole revolution of Chassidus, it's in Pashtus Aksuvim, in the most literal way. But again, till Chassidus is all understood, God doesn't get angry, doesn't get upset. There's no nachas, there's no nothing. It's all like a teacher in a classroom, just projecting that in order to motivate the children, which is a shocking thing that the Torah should say something. It's not mamish true, but you have to say so. God's perfect. I mean, he's not getting angry. He's not getting nachas. Along Chassidus is Megali, yet Mikpashit Kipshuta Atzmas chose to be affected, and he has nachas, it's upset, and he gets, the Chassidus came along to make the pasuk Kipshuta Shal Mikra Ados Meitas. Big paradox. So there's esoteric and what we needed, but you can't understand the psukim. You have to relegate the psukim to saying it doesn't really mean it. Psukim, the whole Tanakh doesn't really mean it. It's just a pretense. Okay. So that's what he's saying. The kavana. What's the l'sheves yitzor? Ani avai ve'inoid. Let's continue. That this truth that I am the Eibishter, there's no other. Please, he's saying, make that bisyashvos settled, which means pnimius. Here by us, here down here, Dafka in this world. So now he starts the whole beer. How does this happen? It's just fascinating that all Chassidus does with one thing. The Kavon El Yonus did it b'tachtoin. 1,000 Maimorim, and I haven't even about there are thousands. Then I don't know the number from the Alter Rebbe. Bem is only this one thing.
The Likutei Torah was taken from over 2,000.
The Likutei Torah was taken from over 2,000. Yeah, it's a staggering number. Staggering number. And it's all one Likutei, so we need so many Maimorim for. So number one, if you didn't get it this time, maybe you'll get it this time. I wouldn't say that number one, but that's Al-Derech ha'tzacha, saying that humorously, that the Nekuda is to be megala this truth in all of the labyrinth, and it's a labyrinth of existence, of creation. It's highly complex. That's part of Didib Tachtayim, that all of these pratim and layers and so on, it should all reflect this oneness. And the greater the complexity, the greater the demonstration of the oneness when it's all embraced and all unified. That demonstrates and expresses deeper the Didib Tachtayim. Tachtayim means in fragmentation and complexity and in layers, endless virtually. And all of this should be Nizgala Dani Avai Ve'eloi. So even in explaining it, there's so many Efanim that Chassidus addresses it. So many subjects. Rotzev Shuv we just dealt with 3 Maimorim, Rotze V'Shuv. So now another whole binyan, a whole asbar. So binyan zeh maschil to this whole inyan. What inyan? The whole kavanas abriya begins and the kishur ha'oiris became the short statement. It all begins with the connection of oiris and kelim. It's already unity. Kelim, recipient, division, hakbola, and oiris kisha oiris became the tying, the fusion of oiris and kelim. So let's understand this. This is what he says, and now he's answering the question why it doesn't say Oiseh Ha'aretz, but Yoitzer Ha'aretz, and why it doesn't say L'Sheves Osa, but L'Sheves Yitzora, the Yoitzer v'Yitzora, these words to form Miloshen Asido Kshira. It means to untie and to tie. Now, the market of this is over there. I didn't look it up. So I don't know. I don't know how the word yitzira, untie and tie. I think also you'd say tie first. Huh? No, I'm sorry. Asir is to tie. You're right. Also is to tie. So they both mean to tie. So it's a term used for imprisonment, right? A person's tied up. Mater asurim. Sorry, correct. So I don't know. I have to look up the mind. Maybe there's some hint of insight over there. Asira kshira. Yeah, now I understand the order. Kshira is involved in asira. Tied up, mamish. So it could be when you form something. What does it mean when you form something? You bring your stuff together. You're taking like your keli, yeah, pashtus.
Maybe the R is tied.
Huh?
The R is tied in the keli.
Just in pashtus, that the tzira means asira ekshira. That word. Because when you form something, what are you doing? You're taking the various ingredients and you're making it, tying it together. You're making the pot, making the clay. But we're asking where you see it in the word Yitzira. Yitzira is Meloshen Asira Kshira. Why? And therefore it means Oiris and Kelim. But he's saying the Loshen means that. Yeah, in fact, maybe that's what it is, because when you form something, you are connecting it and tying things, connecting things together. Okay, I'll look it up again. We'll find some little way inside. So I know. So now, Baruch is b'pnimi senyodim kshira so oiris yashvu b'kelim dafke. So yoitzer means that the oiris should be bound and in the pnimius unified with the kelim. That's a big chiddush. Oiris v'kelim tzad atzmim beizif afachim. Oiris and kelim themselves are contrary. The nature of light is to depart, to ascend. The keli is about containment and descent. To bring down the shefa and to contain it like a pasha the cup. It contains it and contains it, and it holds it down. And therefore, there's this whole avodah, that's the whole nisave, that there should be the kishur of the oiris and the kelim. That answers why he uses this language of yitzar and yoitzer, because it's about the union, the fusion of oiris and kelim. And from oiris and kelim the maila. So from there it's drawn down in all of creation, all the way down to us. We reflect this whole intent, where Shari Ba'odam Yesh Guf V'Nefesh. A person has a body and a soul, but Nefesh Guf Yesh Nefesh Al Gis Nefesh Bahamas. And in this Nefesh he has his spirituality, is about two-layered in the Neshama Nefesh Bahamas. Sheheim. Even these two nefashos are opposite. The The spirit of the Adam and the Neshama ascends, is drawn upwards, heavenwards. It's the Matzah Pasuk. And the spirit of the behemoth is drawn downwards, referring to the two nefashos. So here too, the they become one. And this is the, as it were, the model, the template for the whole purpose. Which is the person's avodah in Kim Mitzvahs Kameshikosav. Anochi Asisi Adet. I made the world, and I created man upon it. I made the world for the person. Hinted the word barasi. The word barasi begimatria tarya. Begimatria tarag mitzvah. So this whole thing of the fusion, that's how man is made, and that's a shlichus, is to do Torah mitzvahs and do megala and the kuslimat. How does this happen? How do you do this? So he says in the Maamar that to fuse two opposite things, you have to have kelim which are broad as opposed to narrow. What does that mean? A child. He cannot tolerate something against his will because of his mind, his intellect is very small, and he cannot entertain anything which he doesn't want right now. A person, an adult, a mature adult, not every adult is like this. He's grown in years, but still a child. But a mature adult can opposites in one very subject, in one person, for example. We learned about this in the previous Maamar. On the one hand, it can be angry at someone who is pressing him. And at the same time, he can do a chesed to him. Because for the objective picture, the chesed has to be done as well. Like we see by the Eibishter judges, that where he's judged, and Rashi explains there, when a person is judged, there at the very judgment, the accusation, there they mentioned his virtues. Even though he's guilty.